The knowledge that those people have and what you can learn from that is invaluable, right? And you say like those opportunities are rare to come by. And so when they happen, some things are worth dropping things for and taking that on. Like you said before, like it's cultivating those relationships that open different doors.
Good Monday morning. Have you ever wondered how successful and happy people got their starts? Every success story begins somewhere, often more humbly than you'd expect. I'm Leilani Brown, host of Your First Job, the podcast.
Good Monday morning, and thanks for listening to Your First Job. I'm your host, Leilani Brown, and I am completely delighted to be joined by Jessie Beckom. From urban planning to competitive gold medaling bobsledding, if that's not a tongue twister, to working at some of the world's most impressive tech companies like eBay, Teespring, and now Atlassian, Jessie is the definition of agile, and that's why I'm so excited for you to hear from him today. Welcome to the podcast, Jessie.
Thanks, Leilani. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with what you are doing now and for whom you are doing it.
Yes. So currently right now, I work for Atlassian, which is a ITSM and SaaS company. I'm a senior program manager on the go-to-market side for them, and currently working with the brand team and handling end-to-end execution, basically helping bring in strategy to execution from a brand perspective for Atlassian.
There are going to be some people who listen to this podcast and they're going to say, you're talking to a world-class athlete, someone who competed at the national level, dare I say the global level, and medaled. Bobsledding? I mean, I know you grew up in Chicago, but I wasn't sure that they had bobsledding growing up in Chicago. Take us back to your exposure to bobsledding as a sport and in your experience and exposure to that.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, they definitely don't have bobsled in Chicago. I think the United States Bobsled Club Federation are doing a better job of kind of recruiting in different places. But for me, it was more actually started at Iowa State University, right? So I went to Iowa State University, played football there, played outside linebacker there. While I was in graduate studies, I had a coach by the name of Charlie Partridge, who had ran into a guy by the name of Travis Bell that happened to be at Ames, Iowa that week. And this is back in like 2002, right? And they were at a dinner and the conversation just started with them. And the guy was like, hey, do you know any football players that may be interested in bobsledding, right? Because the things you have in common there are speed and strength, right? And so a lot of times you get track athletes or football athletes, and and my coach was like, hey, I have a perfect guy for you. And he told Travis about me. My coach called me up, was like, hey, I'm sitting here with the guy on the USA Bobsled team. Now, granted, this is like in the middle of summer at up when I was in Iowa State. And I was like, okay, why are you calling me coach? I mean, I was in grad school. He's like, hey, he wants you to come out for the bobsled team. Are you willing to do it? I was just like, why not? At the time, like I said, I was in graduate school, and also I was leading one of the breakout dissertation classes for urban planning for one of my professors who I was TAing for, And so I talked to my professor. He was like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I went out there, did a workout, did well there. I wouldn't say I did the best, but it was like kind of a learning phase, came back because I was still kind of thinking about it. Then I wound up going out there for a year. I actually set out another year because I had to finish up my master's degree. And then I jumped into it full time around like 2003-ish for there, and just kind of went on from there. Like I said before, competed on America's Cup, and then at the World Cup level and the national team level, competed in like 4 world championship teams. There had some of the fastest push times in the world. And it was just, I mean, God worked it out. It was a great experience and got to meet a lot of people, and was kind of propelled me into the tech world unexpectedly as well.
Yeah. I think there's 2 things that story makes me think about. One is this idea of being open and saying yes, or heck yes, or hell yes to new opportunities, as opposed to being, so that's not who I am, and being fixed in identity. But the other thing that it makes me think about is how the training, the collaboration, the preparation, the practice, and so many other things of being a world-class athlete prepares you for a career. But let's just talk first about being open and, embracing the idea of, yes, I'll try it, or yes, I can do that, or why not, versus that's not me. Were you always that person? Was somebody able to kind of push you in that direction, or and how can people develop that openness that you clearly had?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point. And I would say, I think it definitely was instilled to me by my parents, right? Between my father, my late father, and also my mother, right? And just in terms of never being afraid to try something, right? It's always that mentality in terms of why not me, or it should be me, right? And so I think that was instilled into me as a little kid. I remember working out by myself sometimes, when my father would come watch me work out and train for like football and things, just that work ethic just kind of carried over, right? And so it also carried over in school, right? When I was like, I did like city science fairs in Chicago. Like I got third place in city one time when I was in grammar school. And so that motivation and support has always been there, because it's just like, you never know what you can accomplish if you don't put your hat in the ring, so to speak. And
Yeah,
so I mean, the
yeah,
worst thing you can do is not try, right? Because if you failed again, you always learn something for that. And then, okay, that didn't work. Let me try something else, right? But
yeah.
it's that never give up mentality. I mean, I would see my father working late nights as a because he was a 27-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department, and in that he would work. He would take up gigs working movie securities on the weekend, right? Because again, he had
Hmm.
5 children, and so he would get up after he get off work from working like 8 or 10 hours. Late at night, he'll get up at like 11 o'clock a.m. and go work a movie detail somewhere around like down by the Museum of Science and Industry, where they'll film out there. And sometimes he'll take me with him, and I'll just ride around on the cart with him. So again, it's just that determination to do what it is you need to do and to keep pushing through to accomplish your goals, no matter what that is. And
Yeah,
so I saw that at an early age, and I think inherently I mimicked that as well.
yeah. Well, if there were five of you, you were born into a team.
Yeah, exactly.
So you understood sport and you understood collaboration and
Yeah,
teamwork and being part of a collective, if you will.
definitely.
Has it been how has that though the experience of that and also being an
Mhm.
athlete and being in competitive sports really made you into the professional and executive that you are today?
Yeah, what I would say is that it's funny. I didn't really understand the connection initially that sports had when it came to the business world, right? But then as you get
Hmm.
into the business world, for instance, data analytics, right? We study analytics and data 24/7 as an athlete, right? Depending on our body angle, our speed, our velocity, everything
Yeah,
it comes down. We're studying that, and so you transfer it over into data. So it just changes. I would say like channels, or um, it it just changes the venue, right? And so, but you still need to have that same work ethic, right? That give it your all. Like I said before, collaboration, working with the team, understanding one another, making sure what you're saying is clear, and also basically say what you mean and mean what you say, right? And to be able to back that up. And so that work ethic transfers from sports into working in technology, right? You still need to, sometimes you have to keep those long hours, right? You have to partner with people back and forth. There's a give and take on those things. So I think it's those work ethics that I developed as an athlete that were easily transferable, and it kind of kept me going. One thing too, it also, we say in sports, right? When things get very stressful, people show their true colors, so to speak. And so, being in those intense moments, whether it's something that comes down to 10 seconds to a thousandth of a second, and then being able to win and be successful, those are those intense moments. And I think having, I don't know, 20 or so many years in those environments, when I'm in a presentation or I'm working with the team and things are heated, right? I'm able to maintain my cool because you know what? I've been in intense moments, right? I've also grown
yeah,
up in the South Side of Chicago, which has had some other intense moments, right? And so,
yes,
and being in the corporate in the corporate office, there's nothing life threatening there that's going to hurt me, and so it allows me to maintain my calm and relaxation. Okay, folks. Okay, what is our goals, and how do we get there, and how do we bring along the people with us to get there as well? Again, that whole
yeah.
team atmosphere, right? Nothing can be accomplished by yourself, right? It's basically like
Mhm.
impossible alone to do some things.
And I think probably also perspective, right?
Yeah,
Because as you said, what is really a tough moment, and is this
exactly.
something that's just really temporarily, difficult or challenging?
Yeah.
I would imagine too that it's hard for some athletes to overcome the stereotype of the athlete. around their capability and their capacity. I mean, you're convincing, you've convinced me, obviously, you've had a great career. But what are some of the things that student athletes who are graduating into the workforce can do, say, demonstrate their capacity to contribute, to be part of a team, to practically apply that same knowledge and to lead? What are some of the things that they can do to demonstrate that capability and get them hired?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say a lot of athletes do kind of fall into that trap in terms of a lot of times people hear athlete or they see you as an athlete based off of your build, and you think, oh, hey, that person's they're good at running fast, picking up heavy objects, and lugging them around, you know. But I would say as a student athlete, right, it is the student first before the athlete. I think it's having great coaches helps, right? Because a lot of coaches have instilled in me in terms of yes, you're a student athlete, right? Yes, you're on athletic scholarship, but essentially you're a student as well. And the reality is that most student athletes don't go on to any type of professional level, right? And so at some point in time, you're going to have to you're going to have to use your degree or use your
Right.
degree to get you in the door for something. So I think it's to maintain that focus and also realize that if I'm focusing on my degree, it does not take away any value that, hey, I want to go play in the NFL or NBA or WNBA or be these professional athletes. But there was a stigmatism where, hey, you know what? I need to focus on my sports because that's what I'm going to do. If I focus on my degree in my sport, then I'm not 100% in. I'm not confident in myself. I would
Hmm.
say that's a lie, and that's I mean, and you need to be good at both. I would say also take those opportunities to get those internships, right? Find you a mentor at school or outside of school, or maybe your parents know someone that can help mentor you that. And then kind of dig into, okay, if this is my profession, what are those things that I need to do? What are those learnings I need to have? What can I do on my own? The great thing about now is technology. You have all these learning applications, digital learning applications you can just dive in on your own and get certifications even before you start working, right? So you need
Right.
to, I would say, focus as much time as you spend, or quarter of the amount of time you spend on your athletic career. Also, spend that in your doubling down on your academic career, right? Because both of those are important. Because any fluke accident can happen, and you're not competing. So then all you're stuck with, your mind needs to be as sharp as your body is tuned. And so
Hmm.
that's what I would say to
Hmm.
those athletes. I mean, double down on your learning, right? I mean, like, because at some point in time, it's going to come back, and you're going to need it to be able to be successful. Even if you would say you're let's look at LeBron James, right? At some point, it's like, yes, he finished high school and some of these other athletes, but again, he had a great business acumen. Whoever he was surrounded by instilled that in him. I mean, it's from his universities to things he does with youth. I mean, he's a businessman. And if he wasn't doing some type of studying or even after studying, he would not be where he is right now. And he set himself up and also setting his family up for basically he's created a great legacy.
Right. Right. Well, you remind me of a very good friend of mine. I won't name drop, but
Mhm.
he's a Hall of Famer. But I know him as a business person
Okay.
and a brilliant business executive who has transcended the
Right.
categorization that often happens. So you sort of started, and so I can talk about bobsledding and sports and athletics all day long, only from a point of curiosity because I
Yeah.
myself am not an athlete. So I find it fascinating. I wish I were. I wish I were better. But I want to talk about this early interest
Mhm.
and pursued interest in urban planning. What drew you to that? And, how much did growing up in Chicago influence that choice and decision for you? What were you exposed to that made you even pursue that in the first place? And I should share with you, I'm from Queens, New York.
Okay.
I think that in some ways, the neighborhood that I grew up in is relatively similar to the South Side of Chicago. I grew up in the Southeast Queens, and but I've been curious about urban planning and the intentionality that could affect the way we live and lifestyle and health and so much more. But what drew you to urban planning in the
Okay.
first place?
No, definitely. And it's interesting, right? Because again, like I think we all start off with different plans, right? And
Hmm.
I would say God has His plan as well. And so, yeah, I grew up in the inner city and things. And so when I got into Iowa State University, right? Again, this was I would say generational learning that needed to happen, right? For instance, both my parents
Right.
did not necessarily attend a university, And so there was some learnings there that I wasn't necessarily aware of. Also learning about the NCAA clearinghouse that has certain percentages of what is it of credits that you need to have towards your major. So initially when I got to Iowa State, I walked on there, and as I was getting ready to earn my scholarship, I was talking to a guy by the name of Ed Bannock, who was one of our advisors. And I was in architecture because I wanted to be an architect, right? Because I love like city designs, things like that. And so, but however, with the requirement by the NCAA clearinghouse, I had to pick a different major because I wasn't going to have enough credits because I transferred into Iowa State after going to a smaller school previously to maintain to get a scholarship and also be in the right major. And so went down the list of majors, and so it came down to urban planning because it was a couple other. It's funny, like you said, for different athletes, even sometimes our advisors, right, they kind of push you towards a different degree or things like that that may be easier, so to
Still
speak.
stereotyping and saying,
Exactly.
okay, come over here. I want to put you in the theater
Yeah.
program, or I want to put you over here.
Exactly. So again, like they say, Ed bless his heart. I mean, he was trying to do that, and again, like, and Ed's great. I mean, he was an Olympic wrestler, like I believe like gold medalist as well. And so like he's gone down this path, And so I was looking, I was somewhat stoic in my conversation with him, which communicated to my coach at the time, Dan McCarney. And he's like, can't get a read on Jesse. And I was just like, and I told Ed, I was like, listen, Ed, I respect the fact that you want me to do these. I was like, but I need I want to have a degree that actually is impactful and means something. I was like, okay. I like this urban planning, right? And who knows, maybe subconscious because I grew up in the city. I was like, you know what, that'd be a good thing to go into. It has some aspects of architecture in it as well, and also thinking about the impact that I can potentially have in the career where helping those people like say like of different nationalities or what they call it, underserved community, things like that get better, right? I mean, because I know
Mm-hmm.
like I look at through my travels, I've seen different grammar schools compared to my grammar school growing up, and it blows my mind on how much stuff, how many activities, educational tools, things like that they have that I didn't have growing up, right? And also
Yeah.
just looking at if you want to go back in history to like the red line and the way our different communities have been segmented and how do we impact that? How do we change that? How do we get those resources into that? I think all that kind of played into it. And so I chose urban planning because you know what? After my college career, where can I make the most impact at? And so
Mm-hmm.
it led to me choosing the urban planning field, which I had a chance to actually work in for the city of Winston-Salem for a little while and got to rewrite some coding when it came to mixed use housing, child daycare housing, things like that, just kind of influencing what downtown Winston-Salem, North Carolina is today.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Winston-Salem. I know about Winston-Salem.
Okay,
Yes.
nice.
Yes, absolutely. And on a smaller scale, in smaller communities like that, and relatively,
Yeah,
that's a smaller southern city,
right.
you can really affect change.
Exactly. Right, because they were still
Yeah.
building out at the time, and so a lot of laws were up for reassessment, and there was opportunities there to kind of create like what does that look like, right? What does that potentially help to turn that into like a southern like tech hub look like? What is it like to the
Right.
impact of those communities looking at their 20-year plan, right? What businesses need to be brought in? Like how do we we're looking at death and birth ratios, right? Figuring out, okay, how is this city going to grow? Where should it be growing at? And also what's going to actually help the community, right? So there's conversations happening with community leaders and helping them rebuild things. Same thing when I was at Iowa State, worked out in Des Moines, Iowa, and helping with the community there, trying to help some of the um, impact some of the negative gentrification that was going on, right? And building up, whether it's like I can't remember exactly the name of it. It was programs that we helped where we kind of like it was like beautification programs throughout the city in urban areas, right? Helping plant
Mm-hmm.
trees, plant grass, pick up trash and things like that, just to kind of beautify those neighborhoods, right? Because they have
Mm-hmm.
bones to them, but not everybody was aware of the different grants that they can actually have. So it's also talking to communities like, hey, are you aware of these different HUD grants and things like that that your community can do and bring in money and help build up some of these areas?
Yeah. Has there been from it sounds like to me,
Mhm.
once you are an urban planner in the way that you were, there's no city that you can go to and not look at it through that lens. So
Yeah.
Winston-Salem, Waterloo, Iowa,
Right.
San Francisco, what have been some of the surprising elements of your travels? Because you've lived and worked in a number of different places through the lens of an urban planner. Are
Right.
there opportunities? Are there opportunities that we're not tapping into or not looking at? And are you in Chicago now? You're in Chicago or San Francisco?
Actually, I'm currently I wind up landing out in North Texas, some place called Salina,
Okay.
Texas, right about
Okay.
45 minutes north of Dallas. And
Okay.
so, and to your point, yes, I take a. It's funny, like I said, after studying urban planning for that long, it's hard for me not to see cities from that lenses. One of the first things that stands out to me are streets and roads, right? Just the way the traffic flows or doesn't flow in some instances, right? I also come from Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically is a city that's basically laid out
Absolutely.
on a grid, you know, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And all these other some cities like so most cities are laid out either on a grid or just topographical delineations, right? So cities would like normally follow streams and things like that, right? Because that's where the food was. That's how
Mm-hmm.
someone kind of grew, like based off of where those areas were. And then some will have the whole grid pattern. And so what I notice is it's kind of heartbreaking at times, right? In terms of where I see inner cities at and the lack of resources, and then compared to where I see like suburbs or more rural areas as well, in terms of how they're building them up, but kind of like leaving cities behind, right?
Yeah.
And so there's more resources available for reasons I can only think based on data. Has to do with racial disposition and things like that in terms of what we have and what we don't have, or the quality of schools, things like that. So I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would see that inequality that happens there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that also comes with knowledge as well. So again, having been able to educate those folks in these neighborhoods, say, hey, there's pots of money out there that you can dive into, and maybe that's helping getting up with
Mm-hmm.
grant writing courses and things like that to understand like what's available to them, right? Like I said,
Right.
reading is power. Something that's always been taught to me as a kid, and so I do see that. I also see the difference in the quality of foods and things like that offered, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
growing
Food deserts. It's a huge
exactly
issue.
food
It's
deserts,
a
yeah,
huge
you
issue. Yeah.
know, like you might see like convenience stores instead of a Whole Foods or something like that, or like just those grocery stores, like I said, the food deserts. And again, that lack of nutritional value foods and affordability to actually get
Mm-hmm.
it impacts neighborhoods, right? In terms of their health, their mental health, their physical health, and just the longevity of that of different cultures. And so, yes, I
Right.
see that all the time, and it's disheartening. I mean, I got to the point where, again, like growing up in Chicago, right? We would go to like Jules was the name of our grocery store. And after traveling around, like around the world or Europe and things like that, I remember I would go back home sometimes to visit my family, and I'll look at the chicken breast, just something simple, right? Or I look at how big and bruised they look, where they look just like, and then I'll go to other neighborhoods or even like neighborhoods that have a different demographic makeup, and the food quality there looks better than what was in my neighborhood, or even like the streets, right?
Yeah.
I was telling my
Mm-hmm.
wife around where I grew up in Chicago on far south side. Let's just say around don't live there now, so people can't find me there.
I was gonna say you gave out that address real fast.
Yeah, I know, right? And so, but what I
I'm
noticed
sorry
is
to the
that
people who live there. We'll bleep it
it,
out.
exactly, cause the people to live there. And so, but the roads there, right? And I would say, I told my wife, it's like I never realized how beat up the roads were, right? And you think about that over decades, right?
You don't
Uh,
know. Like you're in it.
is you're in it, and it's death by a thousand cuts,
Yeah.
right? Because not only do you have to have a 45-minute commute sometimes to your work or an hour, but you're driving on these beat up streets and it's bumping, bumping, bumping. So mentally, it's just like, okay, I go these rocky roads, but also too, it's beating up our vehicles, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're in like a medium income family, a low income
Mm-hmm.
family, now that your vehicle's getting beat up, so you have to have more repairs. So it's all
Mm-hmm.
these little things where in other neighborhoods, they're just smooth coasting, cruising through like no adverse things happening. And so you have all these things piled up as this, is that, it's the food, it's the streets, it's the neighborhoods, it's the liquor stores, all these different elements that are detractors from our communities that I don't necessarily see in other communities. And
All
so
right.
yes,
Is it walkable? Can you
exactly,
ride a bike? Can
yeah,
can can it be a biking center and city?
exactly.
How far do you have to drive to get better quality
Right.
groceries, and how much natural foliage is there, and how does
Exactly.
that affect the air quality? How is the water run? All of those things
Yeah.
require intentionality. Public access to sports activities, hobbies,
Exactly.
recreational centers, libraries, it's all part of it. So I
Definitely.
thank you for bringing that up. I know we meandered a little bit, but I do think that
Mhm.
I think this is relevant because there are places to serve as an advocate, to
Right.
engage for every one of us around the communities within which we live, and show up at the town meetings when the planners are there and
Exactly.
say, these are the things that we want to see,
Exactly.
and I think it's something that we should be doing in our work outside of work.
I agree
So,
because I mean it's
so
our
yeah,
community, and like I said, like those city planning meetings, those school board meetings, right? All of those things are very impactful that we should try to find time to help impact.
yeah, yeah. I think this is never gonna leave you. Because
No.
you found yourself, like, jumping into the tech field at
Mhm.
during a boom time, and, it's moving so rapidly. I think sometimes we forget that we're still relatively early in the days of this technological revolution, and so then you find yourself at these tech companies. How did that come about? What happened there?
Yeah. So the
And
way
give
that
us a date and time frame so we have some context too.
no, definitely. So just to kind of date it in terms of it kind of happened again, like I think things move without me necessarily knowing, right? So the football led to bobsled, bobsled led to tech, so to speak. And the way that happened is that at the Olympic Training Center, we have different companies, groups come in to kind of learn about, okay, how as athletes do we communicate? How do we work with people from different areas around the world or the country, things like that? And how do we build those teams to collaborate? So you have all these different companies kind of coming in for their workshops. At this point in time, it was Devin Winnick, who was the president and CEO of eBay. This was like out in 2013 when this happened. Him and of course Sarah Brubaker, as you know, was his chief of staff at that time. They came to the Olympic Training Center, and at the time they were put in a room because they wanted to understand like how do we this teamwork works, right? And so we take them through the events we do, like we walk them down the Olympic path, we light the torch and things like that. But we also have a dinner, and we had a meeting where they wanted to understand what our athletic careers were, but also too one by the name of Sherry Von Riesen, who was basically like the house mom for like a lack of a better word. In that room, she had athletes that had anywhere from their undergraduate degree or their master's and doctorate degrees, and some who also had their own businesses. And so as we read off our athletic resumes, we also read off our academic resumes as well. And it was like, oh, who are these people? So fast forward, it's like, hey, we're gonna open up an internship program for that. I wound up getting into that internship program because I wanted to understand a little bit more about marketing because I was doing my own guerrilla marketing for myself. And so that led to an internship at eBay, working as a project manager on marketing as an intern, right? And again, I feel like that movie, 40-year-old intern, or I can't remember what it was, like 30-year-old intern. So I'm like in my 30s and I'm taking an internship. I was like, you know what? If the
Do
opportunity,
it.
opportunity, like go for it, right? And so in that
Yes.
internship, I did well, and also I told myself, you know what? I'm going to turn this internship into a full time role. And I was like, I'm not going to buy myself any shoes until I buy it. And so like, I literally had holes in the bottom of some dress shoes I had because I only had like one pair because again, Bob said doesn't necessarily pay well. But at the end of that internship, I got a full time role working on marketing and on data analytics on the marketing customer data analytics team. And so also too, ironically enough, so like again, like that work ethic, I think I mentioned in terms of like shoveling snow as a kid, like just kind of that endurance, right? I was like other interns were like are out partying and doing all this other thing. But again, I'm a lot older. So you know what? I know what I want. And so I would get there early in the morning. I would get there late at night. And ironically enough, there's a guy by the name of Robert Chatwani, who wound up being the CMO at eBay at one point. He saw me there. It's just so positioned. I was positioned right by one of the exit doors on like the lower floors. And he would come in and see me and he would leave and I would still be there working. And so we wound up starting up a conversation, wound up being like one of my great mentors and things like that. And that helped open some other doors and conversations. And so that's how I got into the tech world. But again, it was that
Yeah.
early morning, late nights, and that work ethic that I developed as a kid, walking around shoveling snow in Chicago in negative some odd degree weather, trying to, again, I guess maybe early entrepreneurial mindset and make money and things
Yeah.
like that or whatever to go out there and get things done that led me into the tech world.
But putting in the work. I mean, so
Yeah,
first of all, I have to shout out my very good friend Sarah Brubacher
yeah,
McDonald, who I've known for a long time, long time, because she's brilliant, but she's
yeah,
also such a connector and intentional about it. So she's the who introduced me to you
right,
and was like, you have to have him on the podcast. I was like, I take whatever she says, and I'm like, yes, that's absolutely true. But what you're talking about are two things that I think go hand in hand, and actually three things. You know, I talk about this in some of my conversations and speeches, and I know you do speeches, but three things that I think are essential to the journey. So it's experience,
yeah,
accomplishments, and relationships. And being a connector and being on the relationship aspect is so important because that's going to introduce you and open up, you know, other doors for you. And then the other thing is just the willingness. Going back to what you said in the beginning, yeah, I'll try bobsledding, or
right,
yes, I'll be a 30-year-old intern. And I will just say, for the record, I am willing to be an intern for at least four people,
okay,
and I am much older than 30.
yeah.
But if I got a
But
summer
so am I
internship,
now.
right? If I had a summer internship for working for Oprah,
Yeah,
working for Brene Brown,
mhm,
Jay Shetty, and or Robert Smith, I would say yes. I would
definitely.
take the summer off. I would do an unpaid internship working for those four people, maybe a few other people.
Exactly. Because the knowledge that those people have and what you can learn from that is invaluable, right? And you, like I said, like you don't, those opportunities are rare to come by. And so when they happen, some things are worth dropping things for and taking that on. You know, like I said before, like those, it's cultivating those relationships that open different doors, right? And that's why you're in a career or looking for a career, those connections that you make. And also, like to your point, like it's also how you show up, right? I consider
Mm-hmm.
myself a very direct and sincere person, you know, and so I think that sincerity matters, and I think that that shows through life. And like I said before, if I wasn't who I was, Sarah would never introduce you to me, and vice versa. You know, I mean, because it is how you show up, and it's that
Right.
genuineness that goes a long way.
Yeah. And there's no overnight success,
No,
even though we think we want to have it. So, you know, I focused there for a second, or focused
mhm,
our conversation there for a second, because I think it's so important for anyone listening to this who might be saying, well, I'm not doing anything for free and I'm not going to do any, you know, it's just not the way it works. The truth
right,
of it is there's no substitute for that experience, and there's no substitute for that work. So speaking about early starts,
okay.
what was your first job?
I would say my first job was shoveling snow in Chicago, and I'm going to dive into my little bit of sci-fi nerdiness here, right? As a kid growing up, again, like my mom was at one point in time she was a nurse, and then she became like a stay-at-home mom once I was born, and my father was a police officer, and so I remember again, like my father going to work all the time, my mom being home taking care of the kids, take care of us, which was very, I think, pivotal in my growing up and being raised. But at the same time, too, it was one of those things too where like we had a little bit of allowance, but also too I wanted to have more of an allowance, and so I had
Mm-hmm.
this Darth Vader head that I used to keep my Star Wars figures in, you know. And so at one point in time, I was like, you know what? I was like, well, I can't since I can't work because I had to be, I want to say like maybe 11, 12 years old and things like that, you know. But I was like, you know what I can do? I can shovel snow. So I grabbed some of my friends, like, hey, you guys want to start shoveling snow? But it's basically like shoveling snow and raking leaves around the neighborhood. And so we started doing that. And so I would take the money I earned from shoveling snow and I'll put it inside my Darth Vader head because they had like little slots, kind of like money slots, right? So I had my fives, my tens, my 20s, and I would just put them in there. And I remember like one of my sisters, she would spend her allowance quickly, and she was like, "Oh, can I get some money?" I was like, "Okay, well, it's going to charge you a quarter of interest if you if you want to borrow some money for me, and like I need that interest by like the next couple of weeks or so, and stuff like that." Over that, but stay in that shoveling snow job. One of the early lessons that it taught me was, again, be precise in the things that you say. And I say that because I can't remember the guy's name, but it was a corner house, right? And we would charge like 20 or so dollars for the corner house because it was like maybe like three or four of us at a time, right? And we went up there and it's like, yeah, it'll be $5 a piece or something like that or whatever, or it'll be like $5. And so then we showed us no, actually no, this was raking leaves. So it's kind of like both, right? And so we raked his leaves, and all of a sudden, he's
And
like,
so
oh
for anyone listening that did not grow up in this type of neighborhood, to have a corner house, you have the walkway, you have the front, you have
yeah,
the side,
it's a big
and then
lot,
you have the driveway. So
exactly.
you have it's a lot more
Yeah, it's
than
a
just
lot more,
this.
right? So we showed the guys, we raked his leaves, and so then we get back. He's like, okay, it's five. He's like, it's $5, right? I was like, no, it's $5 a piece. He's like, well, you said it was $5, and so he gave us $5. So I was just like, really? And we were like mad, right? Also,
Mhm.
too, being that we were kids, we still had the leaves, so we emptied out all the leaves back in the yard. And it was just like, you didn't, yeah, because we were like, you didn't pay us the money we said, so we just dumped it all out, and then we ran off.
Oh, now you were the CEO of this operation?
I would say we were collaborative partners, right? Because we were
Okay.
all it was equal share, right? But I will
It
say
was like
also
not a head salesperson or
no.
like
I mean, but I guess I would be the one knocking on the door first and talking to who it is that we're going to rake their leaves. So, but I never thought
okay.
about it that way. But that's a good way to look at it. So I guess I was the head salesperson on that, and I
But
would
you were
also say
splitting the profits.
yes, but it's splitting the profits, right? But I also
Yeah.
say too, in that job, I mean, like because sometimes my friends wouldn't want to get up and go shovel snow, rig leaves, so I went out by myself, right? And
Hmm.
so there's like, you
Hmm.
know what? Okay, I understand you don't want to do it, but okay, there's opportunity there, and so I'm going to do it myself. But also taught me that you know what, I can do things on my own and also work through that. And again, those were hands sore, feet cold, things like that, but still going out there because there was opportunity and also there was a need for it, right? Especially
Yes.
for some of the older people in our community, things like that, who wanted to be
Yes.
able to get out there and show their snow. So
Yeah.
that also taught me that independence and also that resilience on my own, and also just belief in myself that I can kind of fight through those things, which also leads me to currently today, where it's like, some things may be hard, but I can still fight through those things.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what are you excited about that's happening right now? What are you looking forward to next as you continue to proceed in your career? I'm excited for you because you still
Yeah.
have so much more runway.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to like just taking on greater opportunities and kind of seeing where I can be impactful, not only at Atlassian, but also within the community, right? Like, so I was like this past year I got married, and so now
Congratulations.
thank you, and so now I have a bonus daughter, and so like just getting involved and helping her with her sports and training, and also getting more involved, like I said before, in the school areas, in the school, in her school, and also the district as well to understand like what's going on here and making sure that there is equality happening. We are pushing for different things in our community and a seat at the table,
Yeah.
and just trying to be impactful in my neighborhood and also to those around me. I mean, I serve on the United States Olympic Paralympic Ethics Committee, and so again, trying to be an impactful person there and making
Hmm.
sure that ethical behaviors are happening for within inside all of the national governing bodies for sports, and make sure there's been a positive for those athletes there as well. I mean, we'll see what other opportunity God has for me in terms of tech work and things like that, and being a driving force in what's happening at Atlassian right now, and just kind of see what opportunities come. I mean, like, and again,
Yeah.
like continuing to like meet great people like you and just see where that influence goes, right? Because I do want to make sure that I'm impactful in my community and also those folks that I talk to, whether let's say on podcasts, video casts, or just in my everyday life that people don't necessarily see, right? To kind of help try to mentor those folks. And even like my nieces and nephews, just kind of help them through situations that I've encountered, they're encountering now, and how to kind of navigate those waters.
Well, we are a few weeks away from graduations, wherever you're graduating
Yeah.
from, whether it's high school or graduating from college or a certificate, even. What words of advice do you have for the class of 2025?
Class of 2025, I would say keep working hard. I I admire the fact that these new students are aware of mental health and physical health, right? And I would say, although some things the road may seem hard, just keep pushing through. Believe in yourself, trust yourself, because again, everything's made up, right? And I got that from the what is the series ATL, right? Because someone has to think of something. Everything has not already been thought of, and so don't be afraid to blaze your own path, even if you have to start in the footsteps of others.
That's a wonderful, wonderful word. Jesse, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Leilani. I appreciate the opportunity.
Your First Job is a production of Giant Steps LLC, a company working at the intersection of strategy, culture, career, and education. I'm Leilani Brown, CEO and host of the show. Many thanks to our executive producer, Sam Osborne, and Maxwell Brown for producing our show music and this episode. You can learn more about our company and the podcast by visiting giantstepsllc.com. Thank you for listening.